Hello, well, welcome to Jazz Chat with DavidFriesen. And we have a very, very special guest today. Igor Butman is a Russian jazz saxophonist born in St. Petersburg, Russia in 1961. Butman holds dual citizenship for both the US and Russian Federation, and he is a virtuoso saxophonist and skilled band leader. And American saxophonist Grover Washington Jr. was instrumental in introducing Igor to American audiences by featuring the Russian saxophonist on his 1988 album, Then and Now. American trumpet player Wynton Marsalis has also been a very strong champion of Igor, and former US President Bill Clinton has called Igor Butman my favorite living saxophone player. Igor and I first met in 1983 in Leningrad when he was 22 years old at a very informal jam session, during which time I was on a 3-week concert tour in the Soviet Union with the great jazz musician Paul Horn. Welcome, Igor. Long time no see.
But I was thinking of you all the time, and I thought we saw each other somewhere, or we spoke on the phone.
I know.
But we didn't meet since then.
And we had such a nice, I remember we had a nice rapport in the bandstand. We were so amazed to hear someone so young play so great, you know, and Paul Horn kept talking about you after the jam. He said, man, did you hear that Igor Butman play? Listen, Igor, I want to ask you this now before we get into things. After we played the jam session, we went to a home of one of your musician friends, and we were all kind of sitting there and talking. Do you still play with some of those musicians, or do you know who I'm talking about?
Yes, some of them moved to New York. Like there's the bass player Dmitry Kolesnik, who I've been playing with. They were part of my group. The drummer Evgeny Guperman, he passed away a few years ago. And then another great piano player that was playing at that time with me, Eugene Maslov, he was the first artist on the Mac Avenue records. The pianist. Then who else? There was a guitar player who was very influenced by John Stowell.
Oh yeah, right.
Andrei Ryabov also spent some time in New York, maybe like 15 years. Yeah. And then he moved back, so he's in St. Petersburg. Yes, sometimes I play with these guys. I play with my brother a lot. He's become a good drummer. He lived in New York. Now he moved back to Moscow. He has his own group with his wife. So they play. So basically only one guy, unfortunately, passed away, but other guys I'm playing the trumpet player who also was at the jam station or at home. Alexander Berenson is a soloist of my big band.
Well, so you've stayed together, and that's a great thing. Igor, I just want to ask you this, and I've asked all the people I've interviewed, and it's a subject I think most people would like to hear. A few weeks ago, I was interviewing Lawrence Koo from China and asking him, you know, how was the pandemic thing over there? I want to ask you the same question. Right now, how is it for you? How has this time been with the COVID flu?
Last year in April and May, I mean, I don't remember, the end of April or something, my brother got sick. And so and then I went to get blood test for me, and I had antibodies. but I wasn't sick, or I don't remember that I was sick. So we had in 2020, in January, we had a tour with my big band and quintet we had in the United States. We played Blue Note in New York for 4 nights, and then we went to Florida and LA. And so that's just before the pandemic really got really serious. So when we came back, we had a few concerts, and the last concert of our festival was the beginning of lockdown, basically. And then it was maybe one of the best time of my life, because we didn't do nothing. We didn't have to do anything.
Yeah, I've never spent so much time practicing.
Exactly. I got back to the giant steps and all that stuff, you know.
And all 12 keys, right?
Yeah, but at least one.
Hey, Igor, how early did you begin playing saxophone, and why?
I can answer why first, because my father was a big jazz fan, and he was an amateur drummer, and he had a night gig as a drummer. He was an engineer in the daytime, and then he was playing drums. He made more money playing music than being an engineer.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
he had a kid and then 2 kids, so he had to make some money. And he loved me. He was very passionate for music, so he played drums. But his favorite instrument was clarinet and saxophone. And clarinet because of the Benny Goodman. So our last name is kind of similar, Butman, Goodman. But Gutman. We had a friend who's still alive. He lives in New York. His last name is Gutman. So Gutman, but all the Jewish names come from the German descent, German heritage. Some of them. So Gutman as a Goodman is the same, basically. Okay. So Butman, maybe some clerk made a mistake, put B instead of G.
That's probably what it was.
But anyway, so he went I was born in 1961. In 1962, in the wintertime, Benny Goodman had his big, huge State Department tour in the Soviet Union, many concerts. So my father went and saw that Benny Goodman big band. He loved the music. Also, we had our neighbor was one of the greatest Russian alto saxophonist who lived upstairs in our building. So my father loved jazz and he loved saxophone. So saxophone, the name of the instrument I heard from when I was very young. And then I went to music school, and there was no saxophones teachers, or they wasn't teaching saxophone. The closest instrument was clarinet. So Benny Goodman plays clarinet. Charlie Parker plays saxophone. Somewhere I read that Charlie Parker played clarinet as well. So I went to study clarinet, and then few years later, when I went to college, then they had saxophone as a different instrument, and I picked it up and started working very hard.
The alto, yeah.
Alto.
Yeah. You want to hear a funny story? As a kid, I always wanted to play. Well, first of all, a guy came over to take my sister out on a date, and he played a bass, big acoustic bass. And he asked my dad, "Can I leave this here while I take your daughter to a movie?" Dad said yes. And I looked at that instrument and I said to myself, I will never, ever play one of those, right? But as a young kid, I wanted to play saxophone. I really wanted to play saxophone. And my dad asked me, well, what do you want for Christmas? I says, Dad, I want a saxophone. I really didn't know if there was, if I wanted a tenor or alto. I think I didn't know the difference. I just wanted a saxophone. My uncle Boris had a pawn shop in Tacoma, Washington. And he would get all different kinds of instruments and things. He didn't have a saxophone, so instead of a saxophone, my dad gave me an accordion. Because he says, well, it's a reed instrument. So that's what happened to me. And I never did get to play saxophone. But I love saxophone. My current trio, we travel everywhere, is Joe Manis on tenor and soprano, and I have a drummer and myself on bass. It's just a trio: drums, bass, and sax. I love tenor. I love alto. I love soprano. My mother played C melody.
C melody,
And she came from the Ukraine, from Smila in the Ukraine, in the Soviet Union at that time. She spoke Russian. And that's what she plays, C melody saxophone.
Great.
So, who are your major influences? Like, who really was, besides Charlie Parker?
My teacher, Gennady Goldstein, who I wanted to study with, who was a very famous, very legendary. Even at that time already was a saxophone player, musician. He gave me, as soon as I came to his to study saxophone, he gave me 2 LPs. He gave me Charlie Parker and he gave me Cannibal Adderley in San Francisco. So Cannibal Adderley became my first really big influence with Charlie Parker. Yeah. Then I got recordings of kind of blue. And then I heard John Coltrane for the first time. And so that's another influence. But at that time, I was playing more alto saxophone. So Cannibal Adderley and Sonny Stitt, maybe. But then, and then I got records, Mel Lewis and Friends with young Michael Brecker. So let's say I have Cannibal Adderley, Michael Brecker, Sonny Rollins, Coltrane. That's my main influence. But also piano players. So I love Herbie and Chick. And somehow I got some recordings by Wes Montgomery. So Wes Montgomery was also I transcribed his solo. Yeah. It's interesting, as a bass player, when I was young and playing the bass, when I went to hear jazz groups, I always watched the drummer. I was drawn to the drummer, I'm not talking about drummers, but yes, for me too. Yeah. And like, I had my friends that we played with. I was so lucky that we were listening to music together, and each player who, like, let's say drummer says, "Oh, look at this! Check out the drums." The bass player was saying, "Look what bass players play some." So we were listening music. We were going into details. Yeah. And I loved, like, Lewis. My first Lewis Hayes, of course, then Tony Williams, and Mel Lewis, and what's his name? Jimmy Cobb and Jack DeJohnette, and forgot the name. The first drummer with Miles Davis. Philly Joe. Yeah, Philly Joe. Yeah. Yeah, those are all, Louis Hayes and Sam Jones. I mean, that rhythm section was just, Ron Carter, Tony Williams, and we go on and on. It's just, here's a question for you. You've had a long and very impressive career as a jazz musician. Met a lot of influential people. And an advocate for human rights. What major changes, if any,
have you seen in your own playing through the years? DavidFriesen question.
No changes.
Giant step changes.
Giant step changes.
You know, sometimes, you know, I've noticed going through periods in my life when I lost a son, you know, the death of a son. Yeah, horrible thing. And, you know, life gives you different angles. And I would notice certain doors would open up for me musically. There'd be just different things I would start hearing. I don't know if it's exactly because of my experiences, but through the years. And I just wondered, I know you've been a huge advocate for human rights and just a great jazz musician. People really love you and love the way you play. And I was just wondering if you've seen your music affected by this in any way, or has it been more isolated and you had a goal in mind? I mean, when I was working with Joe Henderson, when we were on the road, sometimes the reviews would be great, and sometimes the reviews would be horrible. And I remember asking Joe, how does this affect you? He says, you know, I don't look to the left, I don't look to the right. I have a goal in mind, and I just aim straight for that. So that was how he dealt with all this stuff. So I was just curious if
I look at left and right. If I get some not good reviews, then I look into myself and say, what didn't I do? Why I got this review? What didn't we do together with the musicians? What we didn't do for music? What did we say? Maybe we said something wrong. Maybe we out of being honest and trying to do something good for music. Maybe I said something wrong. Sometimes it happened.
Yeah.
There's another guy I ask how he stays focused all the time with all the problems that he has on his case. You know, and that's, you know, being the president of Russia is not easy. So I asked him once, I said, what keep you stay focused and be, you know, and not stop doing this stuff? And he said the main thing is the result, what you get. I mean, your goal, exactly. That's what you think. I mean, the music is such a beautiful thing. I remember when Shirley Horn was singing, and I was on the first row with some friend of mine. It was actually in Salt Lake City, in the Snowbird Jazz Festival.
Yeah.
So and Shirley Horn was playing there, and so everybody on the first row get their hands together when she was singing. They were like so emotional. So we all were. My neighbor on the right and the young lady on the left, we just had our hands together. And so the music is magical. And so the main thing is keep this magic and make this magic happen. So it takes a lot of work, a lot of talk, a lot of thinking, a lot of making people believe in it. Also, my partners. It's been so hard in Russia to talking to playing and rehearsing my guys. Some of them didn't like each other. There's the young guys, you know, like bass players, the drummer didn't like the bass player didn't like the trumpet player. Yeah, pianist didn't like anybody.
That makes for great music.
Exactly, but it's hard, but they were like the only musician. I have no choice. I have to make them play together. But then I have some recordings. Some people have recordings, and I listen it 30 years later, and we sound really for that period we would sound really great. Yeah. So I agree with Joe Henderson. The goal and in what you believe in.
Yeah.
And also music that make me happy, jazz, because of spontaneous because of you have your freedom on a very little spot. I mean, people say, "Oh, jazz is free." It's not free. I mean, your freedom is based on your ability to play, ability to have. You can play avant-garde, you can play straight ahead, you can play whatever you want. But if you don't have ability, if you don't have things in your fingers, in your brain, in your body, then you're not free.
You don't have
to be
freedom.
free. You have to be.
Right.
Right. When you have, if you can have freedom when you can say anything. You have to have a great vocabulary. You have to have great ideas. You have to read books. You have to watch movies, talk to people, see, help them, be with them. That gives you freedom of thinking. That gives you freedom of your own opinion.
Yeah, I was a great Muhammad Ali fan, and I would watch Muhammad Ali fight, and he could fight offensively while backing up. And in the early years, he never got backed up into a corner. And I thought, well, that's the way I want to play bass. I want to be able to play so I have the chops that I won't get backed up into a corner melodically over the harmony or rhythmically. Right. So I use that concept to not get backed up into a corner, and I would practice that. You're right. Freedom, you can be free on giant steps. You know, we don't have to be in bondage to any kind of changes, you know. No, I agree totally with that. Igor, this is, it's a short interview. It's not a long interview. I want to end by asking you, and I do this to all the great people I've been talking to here in this past months doing this interviews. What words can you give to the people that are listening now and to your fans? What words of hope in a world that's pretty problematic right now? I mean, it's a great world. There's a lot of great things, but we're going through some difficult times. What words can you share that would give hope and encouragement?
No, life is beautiful. I mean, you can find I think we have to live every minute and enjoy every minute of this life. We can do anything. And the main thing is just stay happy and make your closest neighbor happy as well.
And be thankful too, right?
And be thankful. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So that's why you're happy. If you people very happy when they borrow money and they say thank you.
Yeah, right. Igor, those are great words. I want to tell the fans out there that are watching, there's a new e-shop that I have called DavidFriesen Jazz Education. And if you look up and below this video, you will find some information about this. I'm very happy with this. I put in like several months work on this with my personal assistant. So check it out if you would. Please stay well, stay healthy, and God bless you all.
Thank you. And you too.
Hey, Igor, great seeing you, man. What a lovely spirit you have. It's just great seeing you again. Bye-bye.
Great. Bye-bye.